Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Guitar Talk with Todd here at Todd Beebe Music. Thank you so much for checking in today. Please hit that subscribe button in the lower right hand corner. You know I appreciate it. Find me on Facebook at Todd Beebe Music. Thank you for joining me for another round of the TV Tray Sessions. Today we are powered by Death Wish Coffee, Valhalla Java, as always. So grab a cup and join us. Great stuff. All right, today we are celebrating the release of this great new book from my friends, Jeff Lowenthal and Robert Schaffner. This is Fleetwood Mac in Chicago, 1969, January 4th, the Chess Blues Sessions. Has a great foreword by Marshall Chess and Mike Vernon. And what this is, if any of you are familiar and love the Peter Green era Fleetwood Mac, and you're familiar with Blues Jam in Chicago, Volume 1 and Volume 2, there's all these great pictures on the front, and their CD releases had them too through the years. But there was always these small photographs back here. Many of us would sit there with magnifying glasses trying to see what these pictures were, what the amps were they used at the sessions and whatnot. Well, that's what this book is. We finally have Jeff's fantastic photos in this book all put together. I believe Jeff and Robert said there's roughly about 160 photos in here, and they just did a fantastic job. This is put out by Schiffer Publishing. I'm going to put all the links below. You can get it through them. You can get it on Amazon as well. And finally, we have these photos in this book that you can see. There's great writings going on through here, interviews with Buddy Guy and various other people talking about the sessions and whatnot. So if you're a Peter Green Fleetwood Mac fan or just a blues music fan and you want to know more about a great session that happened in Chicago on January 4th, 1969, you need this book. I also want to tell you guys February 12th, 2023 at Space in Evanston here in Chicago. These guys will be there, Jeff and Bob, signing the books. We're also going to have some live music from the Blues Crusaders, which is Chris Herman, Curtis Meisner, and Dave Spector. They're going to be playing music, all things Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac, going on that night, Sunday, February 12th at Space in Evanston. I'm going to put the link to that below, too, so you guys can get down to that as well. You can pick the book up there. Like I said, Jeff and Robert will be signing it, and you can also order it from the links I'll put below through Amazon and whatnot too. So let's get into this. I spoke with Jeff and Robert, and we did a Zoom interview just a couple of nights ago, and I'm going to put this online. It's a very laid-back thing. We just talked about Peter and Fleetwood Mac and photography and stuff like that. I mean, Jeff is the legendary Lowenthal for sure. He's taken numerous photos of all kind of Miles Davis, Martin Luther King. The guy's photographed anybody and everybody through the years. He worked for Newsweek for a long time, and he's just a legendary photographer. And he was the only guy at the chess session that day, January 4th, 1969, when Fleetwood Mac was at chess. So he took all these great photos. So let's get into it here. We're just going to talk. And like I said, it's a very laid-back thing, just like we do here at the TV Tray Sessions. Here we go. Thank you guys so much for joining me, Jeff Lowenthal and Robert Schaffner. Take it away. All right. So today I have Robert Schaffner and Jeff Lowenthal here with me celebrating the release of the great Fleetwood Mac in Chicago. I don't know why I'm holding it up. It's right here. Now I have two of them here with me.
One for each eye.
Yes, 1960. I was lucky enough. Thank you guys for having me at the VIP event there down at Chess. And I know you guys have talked about this stuff a million times already, so I'm going to tread on some ground. You probably are about sick of answering questions and whatnot, but I just want to get them for the record here. So how did the book come to be initially? I mean, I know, obviously, Jeff, you took these photos and stuff, but how did you two originally meet, and how did the whole process of the book, as we know it now, done, come to be?
I've been telling people that
uh, many of the things that took place in my life I think of as an analogy pool ball, because when you break the pool balls after you rack them, they go in all directions, and you probably don't have much control over that unless you're an expert pool player. And what I mean by that is, if I hadn't, I had a show of my pictures at the Oak Park Library. They have a gallery on the second floor, and Paul Hamer had done the framing for the show, and he said that some of those pictures look like the chess studios. Were you the photographer for the Fleetwood Mac session? I said, yes, I was. And he said, there's a lot of interest in that session. I have a lot of people who used to work for me at Hamer, and they're really into guitars, and they're really into Peter Green and Danny. And he said, I think you ought to do something with those pictures, or maybe we could sell fine art prints of them, because he owns a frame shop, a high-end frame shop.
Okay.
I said, sure. So we ended up selling a number of pictures. Jeremy came to town to play to the United States to play 2 gigs, one in Madison, Wisconsin, and one in Berwyn, about a mile from my house. And Paul Hamer said, Jeremy's coming to town. We should go see how he's playing today at Fitzgerald's. So we went to that show, and we saw the show, which was great. And after the show, Paul introduced me to Bob, whom I hadn't met yet, and said, this is one of the greatest fans of Peter Green and so forth. And we talked, and I'm not sure how many times in the future, but he had occasion to say, you should do a book of those pictures. And I'd say, not too much work. Who would buy it, and so forth. And he kept asking and asking and asking. And I finally said, if you find me a publisher, I'll do the book. And, we disagree over how many weeks it was. In a relatively short period of time, he found me a publisher. And we got on a conference call, and we talked with our editor, who also was a jazz fan and a Peter Green fan. And the last thing he said during the conversation was, I'll be sending you a contract. So we had a book.
Wow.
I'll interject a little to that.
Sure. Okay.
Make sure you tell the truth.
Okay, Jeff.
So how many days was it really?
Well, Jeff gave me some parameters for publishing. He's a tough guy, legendary that he is. And it took me, some publishers wanted to see every picture, which we weren't going to do. People wanted to see some of them. And with respect to artists such as yourself and, people like Jeff who get ripped off constantly, especially of late in the last couple decades with music.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you know what? This guy's had pictures, the iconic picture, which is on my Facebook page, ripped off so many times. They've never been published.
Did you ever pay for that album picture?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever pay for that picture?
I owe you.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I'm in-road fighting with Todd in the middle. So I talked to the Schiffer Publishing, and by chance, as Jeff said, the editor happened to be a huge Peter Green fan. Matter of fact, Todd, he said one time, I talked to him about 3 times before Jeff ever got on the phone. So that
wow.
What Jeff said is true. When Jeff got on the phone, at the end of that conversation, we did get a contract, which I was not aware of with the 3 prior conversations.
Wow. So the whole thing kind of came to be, and if I'm correct, I was at that show. I think it was 2006, 7 at Fitzgerald's that Jeremy played.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I have to look up the date.
Yeah, I was at that show, and then I saw him at Reggie's in Chicago. He played there a couple years later in, I want to say, 2009, and he played the Chicago Blues Fest that same weekend. But that's just crazy, because obviously I didn't know you guys at the time, and I had no idea if I would have known the photographer was there of those pictures, I sure would have went up to you, but I had no idea. But,
well, and Todd, you have the albums you have behind you were the biggest pictures you could see, and those are usually the import versions.
Well, right, or the
right.
I had the magnifying glass out.
Exactly. So one of the biggest parameters for a publisher was overseas distribution, because let's face it, people in America think Black Magic Roman was written by Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
And so one of the parameters I had was make sure that they had overseas distribution, and Schiffer's got distribution on every continent.
That's great. So basically everything, how it was laid out, was anyone else besides you two involved in that? Or
we had some input because when you were using this volume of pictures, they wanted us to indicate which pictures we wanted to go where. In other words, if we have a particular person's statement or interview, we'd say, okay, this is an appropriate picture to put by this interview. And we had a rough idea to tell them how large we wanted it to be. They gave us like shots. But the majority of the layout they did, and I thought they did very well. Let me back up for a minute too. You may not, unless you're dealing with publishing, you might not know what a great thing this was that Robert did. Because having a book published is not easy. And, my first book, the one that people are seeking out now, I sent what are called query letters to 3 publishers, and 2 publishers expressed interest and 1 didn't. But that was crazy because it was hard to get a book published then, and it's probably harder now. But if Bob talked to 3 or 4 publishers, and the best of them, I think, probably is Schiffer, and they picked it up, that's great, because you read about people writing books that are big sellers. They went to 46 publishers and got 45 rejects. And then finally somebody published it, or they self-published it, and then a big publisher picked it up because it was a big seller.
Right.
Yeah, wow. So the design that Jeff's talking about, they did, but we told them what size the pictures, who would they go by. For instance, the picture by Bruce Thomas's words, and this is something that he told me too, because he recorded with them about a year later with Peter Bardens from Camel. He said he was wearing the same outfit.
Really? Wow. That's crazy.
And our publishers stopped listening to Fleetwood Mac.
A little further too about the pool ball. If I hadn't been introduced to Robert, there would be no book because nobody would push me to do it. And the pictures, I licensed them to Mick Fleetwood's book, or not
Sony,
but the other authorized biography. But if those people hadn't been introduced or met or had the same thing happen, then nothing happens. Your life or the book itself would stop then. Paul expressing an interest. So, and it's carried on now. Paul Natkin suggested to Dave Hoekstra that he should do an article about me. So Dave Hoekstra did an article and sold it to New City. And there are people seeing that article and like that. And one guy today went out and bought that book. It's a 50-year-old book. It's crazy.
That's great. Oh, Jeff, you certainly deserve it. I'm telling you. Wow. It's so great to see somebody that deserves it finally getting what they deserve. It makes me so happy.
He's blaming me,
I don't know if I can deal with the fame, though. That's the problem.
It's all my fault, Todd. I apologize, Jeff.
It is your fault. Yes. So, Jeff, how did you, going way back, and again, you've probably answered this question a million times, but how did you first get started in photography? Was that always your career, or did you do anything else?
When I went to college, I was planning on going into advertising. And somewhere in there, I think around my second year, I switched to a journalism sequence. And I had started as an amateur photographer, and then I was a photographer for the new school of newspaper and stuff like that people do. But I tell this story in the book. The way I got into photographing recording sessions was I was a jazz disc jockey for about 6 months, and I had a guy on the show named Franz Jackson, who was a tenor saxophonist and clarinetist, who also played bassoon in the Civic Symphony. So he was a very well-rounded musician.
Oh, wow.
And he was like from the previous generation, and he started in the 30s. He played with Roy Eldridge and was an arranger and stuff like that. And a woman sent me a postcard or a letter when I was on the air and said, I want to hear more stuff like that. You should listen to Franz Jackson and come out and hear the band and stuff. So I said, okay. And I went out to Stickney to listen to the band. And the trumpet player in the band had replaced Louis Armstrong in King Oliver's orchestra in like 1926.
Wow.
And he was playing very well. And I thought, wow, this guy is great. I should talk to him on the air and interview him. So I did. And the owner of a small record company called Replica Records called the owner of the station. It was a very small station, WNIB. And there were only two of us in the building. I was on the air and the owner was in the office. And this call comes in and he said, should I record this guy? I make recordings to show off high fidelity equipment, to go to what we used to have high fidelity shows every year in Chicago. And the owner of the station said, I don't know anything about music, but I'll have Jeff call you when he gets off the air. So I said, you absolutely should record him. He hasn't recorded in 10 years, and he was a major player.
Oh, wow.
So they had this session at Replica Records, and the guy's studio was his garage that had been outfitted as a recording studio. And I figured somebody ought to record this, so I took pictures of it. And I gave some of those pictures to friends, and they used them for publicity and stuff. And a couple of years later, they got a contract with Mercury Records. So then they did their date at Universal Studios, which was the big time. And I photographed that. They invited me as a courtesy because I've been had something to do with their getting the original session. So I was a better photographer 2 years later. And this is the pool balls thing again. The editor of Downbeat was there to view the session because he was going to do a story about it. And his photographer was supposed to meet him there and do photographs that they would use to prepare this story. And he never showed up. And he saw me shooting and he said, can I see your proofs when you get them back? And I said, sure, not knowing what was going to happen. So I brought him the proofs and he gave me a 2-page layout in Downbeat, which gave me nationally published work. And that was my entree to get considered by Newsweek. And then I freelanced for Newsweek for like 10 years, even when I went into the Navy. And if their photographer had shown up, I probably never would have had the shot to have a 2-page story in Downbeat. And I
That's amazing.
So it's just all that stuff happening.
Yeah, that's great. That's great how stuff like that happens.
And I'm a failed trumpet player. I'd like to.
I was going to ask if do you play any, or you did try the trumpet at one time, huh?
I had a good teacher, Reynolds Shoki, who now made Shoki trumpets.
Okay.
He's gone now. But, it's an interest. It was fun, but I certainly wasn't a professional quality.
Wow.
That's one of Jeff's favorite musicians and friends was Roy Eldridge, was a trumpet player.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's fantastic. So now, Robert, what's your background?
To Jeff's point, I met Paul Hamer when I was, 15, 16 years old. before Hamerguitars was ever a thought in his mind.
I love the picture of you in the book, by the way. Like the that's awesome. That was man.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of crap for that. I sent him 4 pictures, by the way, and that was the oldest one because in the '60s, and I'm not as old as Jeff. So they took the oldest picture. What can I tell you? And that drum set's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Really?
The 1964 pink champagne Gretsch set. And when my wife and I went to Cleveland, I said, "That's my drum set." And of course, she used a couple of expletives to me. And I said, "There's a crack in the top." So, long story short, it was sold to Dennis Wilson.
That's unbelievable! Wow.
So I used to go around with Paul, going to vintage string shops and like, "Hey, how much do you want for that? 59 Les Paul that's in the corner?" And that's how Paul started with Northern Prairie Music in Wilmette, Illinois. And then I realized in the music business back in the day, as it were, that you couldn't make money. You really can't make money now. and there was so much politics involved. So I decided to go into consumer electronics. I worked for Panasonic and Samsung most of my adult life.
Okay.
But music's always been a hobby or something. And quite frankly, I'm very thankful to Jeff Lowenthal because Danny and Peter are 2 of my heroes. That mean your guitars, certain guitarists just speak to you, just certain things.
Oh, yeah.
And to be a fan of theirs since I was, 15 years old, 16 years old, and to be part of musical history now, I mean, I'm indebted to Jeff for that, for the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this book is, even before I knew it was coming out, when I first heard about it, I almost did a double take. I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm not going to have to sit there with a magnifying glass anymore? I'm like, this is fantastic. I mean, I think that's when I got a hold of Jeff and whatever, and because I found out it was coming out. I'm like, that's amazing.
And the idea of this really was my son's idea because, I was by the time he was 11, he was living with me. I got his mom divorced me when he was about 8. So he grew up with Peter Green and Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel and all that scary music too. And then when I got an email from Bruce Thomas from the Attractions, because he saw Jeff's photo on my page, and basically, as it says in the book, anybody who's got a picture of Peter Green, because Bruce doesn't think he's the best guitarist, Todd. He thinks he's the best musician.
Oh, there you go.
So my son's like, "I'll write a letter to Peter about how you met Bruce Thomas. Nothing about music." And then he passed away. So I never had the opportunity. Although I did find out his neighbor, and unlike in America, when you know where somebody lives overseas, whether it be Peter Green or Peter Gabriel or whoever, people don't go line up and wait outside their house. Yeah. And the guy who knew Peter's address said, "I'm not sure I'm comfortable giving you his address. There's a part of privacy that's important."
Right.
He wouldn't give it to me, which I respect. But then, like I said, then he passed away. So this has been my letter to Danny and Peter and saying thank you.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about that at the VIP. I mean, it's a heck of a letter, that's for sure, Robert. I mean, geez, wow, this is just fantastic. Did either one of you guys ever? Obviously, Jeff, you were there at the session, so you got to see him play. But like Robert, did you ever see Peter?
I met Peter when he was in the Splinter Group in the '90s in California, and after the show, my wife and I. The only autograph I've ever gotten in my life, actually. At the end of the night, he did an encore. He was playing a turquoise Strat. And I turned to my wife because for about a minute and a half, he had his tone.
Yeah, because I think if it's what we're talking about, he was doing Going Down, I believe.
Yep.
And it's weird because I remember Connie, my wife, who you guys met at the VIP, said the exact same thing. She's like, I really see some spark coming through there. He was coming on that song. He really came back a bit there.
Yeah, I was teary-eyed.
As far as like now, Jeff, did you know of Fleetwood Mac before you went to that session?
No.
And
I didn't know who they were because Marshall Chess called me and said this band is coming in. Are you free to photograph it? And I said sure. And he told me the name, which didn't mean anything. I think this was their first or second U.S. tour, and I didn't move in rock or blues. Well, I moved in blues circles, but it was the chess people.
right.
Right.
Now, do you? I mean, was there? And I'm going to talk to you at the VIP thing about this a bit too, but was there much interaction with the band that day, or was it kind of just like you're taking pictures, we're over here?
I basically have a policy, which is that they're there to make music, and I'm here to get photographs. And I talked to Otis Spann a lot because I liked him, and he wasn't on too many numbers, and we just talk and shoot the breeze. And his wife was there, so we were just talking a little bit. But I don't think I said 10 words to Peter Green, and I can't remember what those words were. But basically, my thing is to be hands off, fly on the wall, and just, photograph what's going on here.
And I think that's important. That, I mean, you saw the Marshall Chess interview, and
right.
Jeff's too humble to say it, but like he said, Jeff had the touch. He was a fly on the wall. You can have photographers in sessions that mess up a track, here or there, or mess up the whole day. And Jeff was incognito. He was like the best description that Marshall said. He was a fly on the wall. He didn't interfere. It was like he wasn't there.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask Jeff about that too. Like, I think, and I'm not a photographer by any means, but from what I observe, it seems like in this day and age, it's not, I don't want to say it's not an art, because it definitely is, but you can, like, I have a friend that has a camera, a digital camera, and you basically hold the button and it's going, it's doing like a flip book. And then he's like, look at these shots. It's like, well, you're bound to get at least one good one. if you're holding. But back in when you did that session, you had to have the eye because you didn't have that luxury.
Right. I mean, I had a motor drive, but I had a manual motor drive, which it didn't have an electric motor drive. But you wouldn't have been able to use a motor drive because that's noisy. You want to be extremely quiet because you've got mics all around you, and you're taking one picture at a time. There are occasions. I mean, I took more pictures than appear in the book because you might be photographing a situation, and you might take pictures that are 5 seconds apart. So the images are very much the same. So we're not going to normally put those pictures in the book. We'll pick the best one and use it. But you're doing one or two frames at a time, and then you move to photograph somebody else. Or you're just trying to cover the whole thing. And when they had the chess people coming, they would cycle people in. So Buddy Guy would be there for some of the session, and Walter Horton would be there for some of the sessions. So I had a lot of stuff to cover. And I think I shot about 10 rolls, which is a lot for a recording session. I'm glad I did because we had a lot of pictures to choose from.
And there's about 50 or 60 in the book that have never been seen.
I could be wrong on the numbers, but isn't it like 160 total that there were, or was it
163
or 60 or 161 in the book? Yeah. And I don't know if that includes the picture of me and the picture of Bob or how we got to that total. But as an afterthought, we decided to put in 4 pages of proofs just as a design factor. And there'll probably be somebody who looks in the proof and said, that picture is not in the book. And my response would be, of course it's in the book. How did you see it? So there may be pictures in there that you don't see reproduced as, 8 by 10.
Yeah, the original idea for the book title was Jeff's response to Marshall when they talked about Fleetwood Mac. Who the hell's Fleetwood Mac?
I don't think I said that, but
That's
that's the
close.
gist. Listen, at the time, I had a girlfriend who did public relations for WAIT or something, and she told me she was having lunch with Jefferson Airplane, and I said, "Who's he?" So that's how plugged in I was to
Well,
popular
it's like
music.
people, I mean, Todd's probably done this, like people going to see Jethro Tull's, like, which one's Jethro Tull?
Yeah, I might have said that the time Paul Hamer and I went to see
Yeah, when you
Jethro.
saw Martin Barr, that's right.
Yeah,
That's funny. So now, where did these? So were there any? I don't even know what to say. Throwaway pictures, or was there any you remember? Like, or no?
No, nope. Everything that was worth printing is in print. There
Is
might have
that
been
now?
two.
pretty much, pretty much.
There might be two or three or so pictures, like Jeff said. You know, the hands on F sharp instead of F, so the hand looks the same. So why duplicate it?
Right. Yeah.
And you can occasionally make a shot. I don't recall any like these, but you're shooting people moving around, and you might have somebody turning his head, and that you can't read his face, so you're probably not going to reproduce that picture. But you'll reproduce the one. There's two pictures of Peter Green, like the iconic one. There's the iconic one, and there's the one they used on the one of the Peter Green records, where you see Peter Green and all these wires on the floor behind him. And that's a picture I took either a second before or a second after the one that's relatively
Okay.
famous.
Yeah, I think that's on a greatest hits Sony compilation.
All right. So Jeff, where did Jeff and Bob, where did these, when you initially were gonna, okay, let's do this, we're gonna get the pictures in the book. So you took these pictures, obviously, from, I'm not a photographer, the original proofs, negatives. You just had those, Jeff? Where were those
Well,
all these years?
uh, the negatives were in a banker's box with the thousands of other negatives, but
Okay.
I had proofs made originally because Blue Horizon needed them, and I had a set of proofs, so I had most of those pictures in proof form. And I think the first day we did that, I drove out to Kenosha, and I had some 16 by 20 proofs made from the smaller. I scanned the 8 by 8.5, 11 proofs to make 16 by 20s, and we looked at it, and we had opinions. Well, what do you think should go in the book? What's good here? And let's use this one. This is a good one, and that one's not so good. So then I went home and I bought a printer just for this purpose, and I printed out nearly all the pictures. And I was out. Maybe that was the first time I was at Bob's, and I had this stack of 8 by 10s, and we looked at them. The original plan was, okay, we'll do it page by page and put these three on the first page and these two
Right.
on the second page. It didn't quite work out that way, but we did see all the pictures, and we could exercise some judgment in which ones we would put in the book and the order they would be in the book. Excuse me.
And to your point, Todd, one of the things that a lot of the publishers wanted is they wanted to see everything, and they wanted the original negatives, which I totally agreed with Jeff that we're not giving up his negatives. So we went to a place in Chicago to have those the original negatives laser scanned and corrected, and then gave them to the publisher.
Well, I was going to ask you how that, again, I'm not a photographer, but like I know with music, we've all heard the stories. You have to actually bake the film, when you're transferring. So, I mean, I'm assuming those negatives are pretty fragile at this point in the game.
Well, they've been reasonably well kept, and they're in vinyl sleeves, so you put a whole roll in one sleeve. Well, here's one. This is one roll of Marshall chess, but they're in protective sleeves.
Okay.
One of the big problems is you have dust on the negatives, no matter how carefully you keep them. And one of the advantages of having what were called drum scans, which is what Bob was talking about, is that eliminates a lot of dirt on the negatives, plus they clean them very thoroughly. And the negatives are scanned in a liquid that's placed in this high-end scanner. I don't know what they cost now, but they used to be like $35,000. So it's not something somebody has in their house. So that didn't require me to be cleaning all these 160. I told Bob, if we can't drum scan them, I'm not going to do the book, because I'm not going to sit here and do what they call desktop scans. I had some of the material scanned that I had licensed, like to mickfleetwood's book and the other books, but the great majority were not scanned, but we had them scanned. Then you never need to go to the negatives again because you have the scan.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I want to call out, Todd, that make sure that you call out in your article, please, is in the front of the book, there's an email address for people to order an original print from Jeff.
Yes. In fact, I will be doing that soon. I was gonna ask Jeff about that the other day. I was going through and writing down the page numbers, and so I'm just like, well, I might as well just say, give me one of everything in the book. But do you remember? Were you there before the band got there that day, or did you come in and they were already? This is 50-something years ago, so I don't expect you to remember everything, but.
I arrived whenever they told me the session was going to start, and being a type A, because I was in the news business, it's better to be half an hour early than 5 minutes late.
Right.
So, and that's just something to live with. But I can't tell you exactly when I arrived, but everybody would have arrived at the same time. Maybe not the band, but the engineer, Stu Black, would be there, and Marshall was there. And so you had to be there early to do all those cuts. I mean, they had 18 tunes, and Mike Vernon had a guess of how long the session went. I guess it went from 9 in the morning to in the night, so it was dark by the time we got out of there. But I can't remember how long it was, because you're in it, there's no outside light in there.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to ask you that too, if you remembered leaving there, or if it was like dark, or whatever. Obviously, it just, what was it, January 4th, so it just passed the anniversary a few days ago, but
54 years ago.
I'm sure it was pitch black by the time we left.
And we know from Mike Vernon it was colder than hell, because he mentioned that many, many, many times.
And we might have talked about, I think at the VIP thing, we talked about this, that there's the one shot with Marshall Chess and his son, I believe, with the board. And you said there was a woman.
His son, he's in the pictures. It must be his son in the studio. And Marshall's smoking a cigarette, and the kid is like beautifully dressed. He's wearing a suit, I think. And when I see all these people, and Dave mentioned this in the article, it's just like we all look so young. And Marshall was in his 20s, and so was Mike Vernon. And I think I was, depending who you talk to, I was either 27 or 31. I think it was 31, because I did do the math. But everybody looked so young, and now that boy, assuming he's still alive, is like a middle-aged man now.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you mentioned that there was someone, I think you said online, a woman said, I was there, or made a comment about,
Bob said that. It was Danny's girlfriend.
Right.
Yeah, well, I say, did you ever find her? That was Danny's girlfriend.
Yeah, she's contacted me on Facebook, and we've messaged each other, yes.
Oh, because when I heard you say that, this must have been before. So was this within the last year that you've gotten in contact with her, or?
She got in contact with me, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that clears that up then. I was going to say, did you ever find her? Okay.
No, and I don't think there's a picture of her in there. There are some girls in there, but I sent her some JPEGs last year, and she goes, yeah, I don't see it. She said I would have been with Danny, and there's not too many pictures of Danny with
I'll
Any
tell you,
girls buy them.
I think she is in the book. We had a case where the publisher said we had uh, two duplicates twice in the book.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And we replaced one of the pictures with one of Danny, he's like slumped in a chair, leaning way back, and there's a girl in the background of that picture. And my guess would be that might be her, but
Yeah.
I can't say that it is.
So hopefully she got the book, and maybe we'll find out, or I'll ask her.
Right.
The other thing that I want to point out, Jeff's, people have asked Jeff if he's, on the record or this and that. If you listen to track 2, Ooh Baby, you hear Mike Vernon, Peter Green talking about, is he coming out to take more photos? Can he come back, come in later? And they're talking about Jeff, and talking to Jeff, I don't think he heard that studio back talk because he was in the lockbox.
Right.
Studio in the control room.
So Jeff, what are some of your favorite, and again, you've been asked this a million times, but it doesn't have to be this session, but even like jazz guys or other, I believe you photographed Martin Luther King too, I believe. I mean, is there any sessions of not just music, anything that really stands out to you?
Well, I like doing creative people in different fields. They could be writers or musicians, and this new city thing. They used a picture of Nelson Algren that I like, and Saul Bellow, and I did other authors who don't appear in there. And I just like working with them. They were more fun to work with. You could have a business executive and be very stiff, but the writers and musicians were just very loose and cool. And
would you say Roy Eldridge was your favorite one to take pictures of, Jeff?
There were a few. I mean, I did some pictures of Mies van der Rohe that I think are tremendous, really. And I've been waiting to see one come out in the book because I sent him one as a courtesy, and I asked him to autograph one and return it to me, which he did. But he didn't wish to buy any. I said, "So, but it's copyrighted, so I don't want to see it appear anywhere." And since he passed, I've been looking at the Mies van der Rohe books just to see if it shows up, because who knows after he's gone. I don't know if he framed it or threw it away or whatever. It's a nice picture though, and he was fun to work with. The one picture I don't have, because Newsweek threw out all their black and white files, I photographed Buckminster Fuller when he was an artist in residence, I think, at Southern Illinois University.
Wow.
And he was quite a unique person.
Well, how about this guy? Wasn't this guy fun to take pictures of?
I'm not going to say it was fun. It was interesting. It was unpredictable.
Well, that makes it fun.
That picture's never been published, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It might be in my book that everybody's snatching up, because I did run some Lenny pictures. I have a picture in there where he's messing around with the owner of the club.
Where he got busted, right?
Right, and he was smiling and laughing, but the club owner lost his liquor license a month or two later, so that essentially put him out of business.
Well, it's weird that you're bringing that up, because I was gonna say we need like at least one good Lenny Bruce story.
I'll tell you what, give me a minute, I'll make one up. How about that?
And as long as I can edit that out, as long as it sounds good.
One thing that does appear in the New City thing, and I hadn't really thought about it in a long time, and Dave and I were just talking in a very loose fashion. I photographed Lenny. I think he was at the gate of Horn about 2 weeks, whatever the engagement was, and I really loved his work. I was there every night except the night that he got arrested, because the musicians union was having an election that night, and I had to be there to photograph Petrillo, who was
Oh, okay.
Lenny Bruce. So one night I was there, and we're sitting at the table with the PR girl for the Gate of Horn, and Lenny looks over and sees my spot meter. Now you have spot meters built into cameras, but it was a separate, very expensive meter. And I'm looking at him through this meter and says, "What is that?" I said, "It's a spot meter." And he said, "Let me see it." And I just looked a little quizzically at the PR girl, and she said, "Do anything he wants," because you never know what he was going to do. So he did 20 minutes on my spot meter.
So he went on stage and did 20 minutes on a spot meter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Jeff, didn't you also, I know we talked at the VIP thing, you said you did, and I'm sure you did because you were the chess photographer, but I'm a huge Howlin' Wolf fan. So, and I know you said that, so you did quite a few shots of him, or?
Yeah. I'm not sure where all those negatives are, but I did. There was a Howlin' Wolf album that one side of the album said, "This is Howlin' Wolf's new album. He doesn't like it." Do you remember that?
It was the white album with the letters on it. Yep, right, the electric album. Yeah.
But the either the back of it or on that part where that there was that text, they did a collage of about 30 images that I took at that session, and they put them all together to make, like, I mean, obviously it couldn't have been larger than 12 inches, so it was probably 8 inches or something in diameter with all these pictures from the session. So, and I haven't found all those, but I did I did all the guys. I mean, I did Muddy Sessions and Chuck Berry and stuff like that. So,
how did that initially come to be? The chess to become the official chess. How did that?
How I came to work there, you mean?
Right. Yeah.
A friend of mine named Lauren Coleman was hired as their first public relations person, and I don't know how he was speaking about this. Marcia was looking for a photographer. Their original photographer was named Don Bronstein, who died, and they were looking for somebody to photograph sessions. And Lauren Coleman said, "Well, I know this great photographer, Jeff Lowenthal. Call him." So he called me, and then I must have done good work because I stayed there about 2 years, and then I went into other stuff, or I went on staff with Newsweek or something. Oh, I know what happened. The company was sold. Chess essentially went out of business.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
Shortly after that recording.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's interesting, too, as we talked about that at the VIP. A lot of people think Fleetwood Mac at chess is where we were for the VIP, but it was not at that
we
location.
Were at the original. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I tried to have
everybody gets the studio address wrong. They all think it was 2120, and I said,
yeah,
no,
right.
I was there, so I know that.
Even Mike Vernon got it wrong initially, did they, Jeff?
Right, and I said it was on East-West Street. So
did you ever photograph Coltrane, Jeff, or no?
No, and I never heard Coltrane. I photographed Miles at the Southern Lounge. Coltrane was with him then. That's right. I had an unfortunate experience there. We went in the winter, and I was checking my coat, and they helped me take my coat off, and my Leica fell to the floor because it was on the outer coat. So the pictures aren't sharp.
Oh, wow. Oh, you know what? That reminds me, too. I'm glad you said that, to get for the record what the actual camera was that you used for that session. I meant to ask that, and I didn't forget, so I'm glad you brought camera up.
Those were Leica M2Ss. That was the designation of it.
So how many cameras did you have that day?
Two. Well, I had two with me.
Okay.
I would have had more, but I only had 2 Leicas, and I had to use Leicas because they're exceptionally quiet. You never hear them go off when you fire the shutter. I had other cameras, but you'd hear a click, and that since I had microphones all around me and around the guys, you couldn't chance that because you'd hear it in the tape. Now today you could edit it out, but I don't want to cause that kind of problem.
Right. We were talking about that earlier with digital cameras versus what you used for this Fleetwood Mac session. It's like you don't stop and think, I got to get this perfect shot. You're just going, and then you don't,
well,
it's like,
makes for a lot of sloppy work. I can see that in sports photography where you don't know what you're gonna, you know the approximate time and
right,
but you don't know for sure, and you might want to take 10 frames a second to get exactly the one you want, but not in ordinary photography. I don't mean ordinary photography, but other kinds of photography.
One other thing that you were mentioning, Todd, about taking pictures at the session. One thing that should be pointed out in your article too is if you look at those pictures, there's maybe 3 that anybody's looking at Jeff, and those are posed pictures. Nobody's looking at the camera.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. You're right. I did. Yeah, there's. I can't think of
even the iconic picture of Peter that we've talked about. That he's what are you 10, 15 feet from him? He's not looking at Jeff.
Much closer. He was taken with a wide angle. I was probably 4 feet.
I was gonna say you weren't doing any zooming it. You were just getting right up on him, correct? I mean,
well, the Leica didn't have zoom lenses.
I was gonna say, or it didn't even have it, right?
Your camera, so you have whatever you have. I mentioned in the book what I had there. I had a 21, which is what I used for that picture. You got to be very cautious with that, not tilting it up, or you got to be. You got to pick your spots.
But, yeah.
But there's the only pictures that are looking at the camera, like Jeremy asking him to take pictures of him and JT Brown.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. The minute you said that, I'm like, you're right. Looking through here, there's nothing that's great to think about. Wow. So where is it? Do you still have the cameras?
Actually, I
same question.
I was gonna say, where are the cameras now?
I remember what they cost, which is going to make you laugh. I bought 2 Leica M2s. They were $239 a piece for the camera only.
Wow!
And I sold them to a Japanese firm that used to come to all the photo shows. They never sold in the United States. They only bought Leicas. And I don't know what they paid me for it, but it was much more than I paid for them. And these were heavily used Leicas. Then they take them back to Japan and sell them to collectors for a lot more than they paid me.
Wow.
There's an aura about Leicas. They're very special to collectors, and they feel perfect in the hand. You probably play a guitar that is perfect for you. The Leicas feel like that. You feel like a it's not made in Switzerland, but they feel like something that would be made in Switzerland.
Right.
They're perfect for recording sessions. They weren't perfect for the other kinds of work that I did.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Leica's still making cameras.
I was going to ask you if they're still around. That's amazing. Wow.
Well, the lenses that are known are...
Whenever Leica introduced something new, professionals couldn't get them because doctors bought them all. They have doctors with every camera they ever made.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
And they'd pay over the list price at a photo dealer, for example. Or they'd have a standing order. If it says Leica, I want it.
Wow. Is their competitor Hasselblad?
Well, Hasselblad had the same kind of feel about it, but it was Leicas that was just super special.
What is your take on going back to the Munich incident and Dinky Dawson? In Dinky's book, he says he noticed an immediate change in Peter right, and a lot of people have said that, but listening to bootleg recordings and stuff, it doesn't seem like, I mean, it's still magic. So it's like, do you think there was,
I don't think, I think that could have been the tipping point in his mental health. It certainly didn't help his situation, but I also think it changed his persona. Because if you read in the Dinky Dawson book, more importantly, I think it changed him into a meek, giving person, into somebody mean and angry.
Yeah.
I've been asked that question a lot. You think it could have been saved? Listen to Man of the World. I mean, if the band was paying attention, could they have saved him? No. He had a disease.
Right.
So I think with Peter, it maybe exacerbated his state. But to your point, people were saying he played great. Then again, if you read in Dinky Dawson books, he became mean. He was giving. He'd talk to people after concerts. And then after the Munich incident, he was insulting people. You hear recordings of them. If you're going to take pictures, do it now. Then put your cameras away. He was getting mean.
Yeah, that's it. I know I've listened to that one a few times, and then and then at the second song, he's like, "It's unbelievable. They're not listening." And I always thought that was weird hearing Peter talk that way, because you just don't think of him that way.
And I did have a family member that had the same disease, paranoid schizophrenia, and my uncle was a psychiatrist. It usually appears itself in your 20s, which is what Peter had. And the drugs, I'm sure the drugs didn't help. Plus, when you're doused and you don't know you're taking it, I'm certainly it has a different effect on you, which is what he was in Munich.
Right.
But it's just like with his estranged son, who tried to get in touch with him. I feel sorry for him because he doesn't. I don't know. I'm sure he's going through pain that I could never realize. But his dad was a sick person. He was mentally sick. You think about it. In 1970, in 1969, Fleetwood Mac was selling more records than the Beatles and the Stones put together. Peter Green said, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's give our money to charity." They thought he was crazy, literally.
Right.
I believe when Bob Geldof did that for Feed the World, he won a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, you're right. Interesting analogy there. Yes, you're right, though.
And because Peter Green thought, and this is dating ourselves, right? No musician should make this kind of money. He's not along with normal people now. He's in the upper echelon.
Right.
That's not right. So he wanted to give his money. So what did they do? Well, let's give you electroshock therapy.
I know. Jeez, that's wow.
I mean, have you ever seen the movie about Francis Farmer?
Oh, yeah.
I saw that with Joel Danzig, Paul Hamer's partner, and I remember coming out of the theater and he kicked over a stop sign. He was so mad.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened to Peter.
Yeah.
People didn't understand at the time that he was sick. He said it was drugs or whatever, and maybe that had an effect on him, but it's like having cancer. I mean, he couldn't help it.
Right. Yeah.
He had a mental disease.
So February 12th, you guys are at Space. I definitely want to promote that.
Thank you.
Because I know you're doing a book signing, I think, this weekend, but this probably won't come out before that.
Probably not. But the space is with some friends of mine, and we're going to do some Dannykirwan and Peter Green songs. We're going to do one John Mayall song. Dave's going to play with us, not his band. And I think in the intermission we're going to play the Mike Vernon interview.
Oh, that's great. So who's the entire band?
The band is Chris Herman, a friend of mine from high school, a superlative guitarist. Curtis Meisner, who made every Hamer guitarist since 1997 backwards, who's been a friend of mine since the days with Paul Hamer in 15. Rob Herman is Chris Herman's brother, 4 years apart to the day. He's playing bass, and our drummer is an extraordinary guy. He used to be my next door neighbor. His name's Chris Avgerin.
Oh, that's
He's
great.
drum teacher at Barrington High School. He's got about 40 students. He'll play a speed metal band, Symphony, and then play with a prog band, and then play with us. He's an amazing drummer.
That's great.
And I think we'll have Dave's keyboardist with his brother John is going to be playing keyboards and singing a song or two.
Okay. Too. Oh, wow. Well, no, I will definitely be there for sure.
Please, thanks.
That's
I was trying to convince Jeff to play trumpet so we could do a couple Chicago songs.
Right, that would be great. Well, everyone watching this, please get the book. I know you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it right through Schiffer Publishing, which is what I did. Well, I mean, as well as picking it up at the VIP. But
Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart.
Yeah, I'm going to put all the links up for all that so people can just go to them too.
Thank you so much.
How did I keep saying real quick and winding down, but
it's okay. It's okay.
How did you guys pick this photo for the cover? Was there a arm wrestling match, or did that come pretty easy, or what?
Jeff, take that one.
They sent us two mock-ups of the covers, two covers. One had about 4 or 5 pictures on it, and the other one used this one picture larger. And Bob and I both agreed that we like this cover, and people do seem to like it. So.
Beautiful, yes.
And you know what? Take the dust jacket off. I think that what they did on the binding is fantastic. I mean,
I was looking at that the other day. It is. It's just it's incredible. The way that like looks with yes.
And we have to give credit where credit's due. The idea when you open the book up, Todd, with the contact sheets was I said I helped design the eyelet, but that was 100% Mr. Lowenthal's idea.
Oh, that's great.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Wow.
So at the jam, though, we're going to all wear those striped pants Jeff's got on in the book.
Yes, I just saw that picture.
And you wear your hat. Okay?
Yeah. And Curtis Meisner had one of the best lines when he was looking through the book. First of all, he opened the book and saw the contact sheets and goes, "Damn it, they're the same size."
And that was the picture we're referring to.
That's it, man. There's
yeah.
Man.
I sent that to them on a lark. I didn't think they'd use it, but they did.
Hey,
so they used that picture and the picture of me that we both don't like of each other, Jeff.
Yeah, we got to get that one up there too. With the there we go.
Yeah, thanks. I liked when somebody said, "Oh, hey, Bob, you were really good looking."
Oh, that's funny. Well, like I said, you guys, thank you so much for taking the time talking to me today or this evening. It's been so great getting to know you guys and having me and Connie at the VIP, and I'll see you again and at Space, and just being able to call you guys friends. It's just great to share the connection through Fleetwood Mac, and all this is just unbelievable.
And vice versa, Todd. It's a pleasure to meet you and Connie, and stay in touch. And Jeff and I are very thankful for what you're doing for us too. So thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. How do you guys? And again, I'm sorry, I'm ending with a question that'll probably go on for another half hour. But how do you guys? I don't even know how I would answer this question. I interviewed Don Felder from the Eagles a couple of years back, and he said, I got to put a comma after that one and get back to you. But I was just kind of like to ask people, in 100 years from now, how do you want to be remembered personally, as like through your family, friends, and whatnot? And then I guess we'll tie that into the book. How do you want to be remembered, and how do you want the book to be remembered 100 years from now? Either one of you can go first.
I'll let Jeff. Well, I'll go first, Jeff. I just, like I said before, I'm just humbled to be part of musical history of a band that I've loved since its inception. And I'm very fortunate to have met Jeff and gotten a real good friendship with him over the last couple of years. So I would just like to be remembered that I was helpful in getting these historical photos published for Jeff. So everybody that are fans now and in the future can enjoy them.
Yeah, no, great answer, because yes, you certainly have. That's for sure. Okay, I'm sorry, Jeff, I cut you off.
No, and I'll go along with that, because to have people, it was just incredible for me to hear from Paul Hamer that there are people who are really interested in that recording session. 40 years later, 45 years later, they want to know about it and they want to see it. And it's interesting that particular musicians can inspire that kind of love from people today. They haven't played, well, some of them haven't played in years and years, and others are playing something different. But people are really interested, and I'm happy to hear it. And I'm happy to have some part in providing them with another aspect of it. We don't have video of the session, but they can see what the studios were like, and they can hear what the studio was like, and they can read about it and get the fullest possible experience that we can give them. So I'm happy to be part of that.
It's a great companion to the audio.
It is. It's such a great. I was going to say this will go down, and 100 years from now, people will reference this book. And Fleetwood Mac has been timeless this long with Peter Green. There's no doubt it's going to go on for infinity. And like you said, people that listen to those sessions, instead of getting out the magnifying glass, they're going to look at this book.
I have a friend who's a photographer. Well, he was an art director for a magazine I worked for, but he's playing blues sessions. But he said when he bought that album, and he just like everybody else, he used a magnifying glass to see what kind of instruments were being played and what kind of amps they had. And he said he saw one picture of the picture of Peter Green, and he was so moved by that. You may not believe this. He became a professional photographer.
Wow.
He wanted to do stuff like that.
Wow. That's great.
And we're friends now. We've been friends for 20 years. And he told me that story. I said, wow, that's great.
Wow, that is great. Well, it's great even for me, Robert. I'm sure you feel the same way. As a kid, looking at those pictures, and the fact I'm sitting here right now doing an interview with you is kind of surreal.
Well, Todd, you're a musician, so and I'm sure whenever you bought the album originally, it's one of the only albums, especially as a teenager, you think, God, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to be in a studio.
Right.
You heard the back talk. You heard what went on. Some people that have interviewed us and asked questions just don't get it. Some people like, how come they didn't do any overdubs? Did they think of cleaning up the songs? I'm like, do you know what a jam is?
Thank God they didn't.
Right. Because those are first and second takes. And to your point, that's one thing I admired about George Martin, like on Jeff Beck albums. Like on, I think it's Come Dancing. It's mistakes.
Right. Yeah.
But if you do a song 100 times, you're a musician, it's like homogenized milk.
Right.
It has no flavor.
Yeah.
If you do it, 3 or 4 times, you get you get the spontaneous, you get the spark.
Right.
And that, like when I do things, I wouldn't do more than 10 takes. I'm like, well, we didn't get it right. I'm like, whatever. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And with this book too, with the music, there's no pitch control. There's no cutting and editing. It's just you lay it down and you do your thing. Todd, thank you. I could talk to you all night.
Oh, I know. I was gonna. I know. I could 5:03 in the morning. All right, I gotta go.
Sorry, Jeff. It's the guys with the beards. It's a cult.
Oh no, we'll talk again, Bob. I love this talking to both you guys. This is great. I could go on forever.
And I gotta say, I'm going to embarrass him, but I am so happy for that guy in orange that this has come out, and it's all because of this, and it's about time. Yeah.
No, it is. I mean, Jeff, my God, the photos you take are just not. This was all you ever did, you'd be a legend.
And I'll tell you this, I mean this seriously. And I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm saying the people who think I'm a genius have not seen my wastebasket. Right? It's true.
Thanks so much, Todd.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, you guys. Jeff, Bob, this has been great. Like you said, I'll do this every Thursday if you want.
Okay.
Anytime, Todd. Hopefully we'll see you at the thing in Evanston, and if not,
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll definitely be there. All right, you guys. Bye. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Todd. Take care.
All right, guys. So there is my friends Jeff Lowenthal and Robert Schaffner talking about their great book once again. Fleetwood Mac in Chicago, the Chess Blues Sessions, January 4th, 1969. Please grab a copy of this, you guys. This is historical stuff. I got the links below for Schiffer Publishing or Amazon. You can pick this up at. And once again, make plans on joining us downtown at Space in Evanston on Sunday, February 12th. I'm going to put the links below to that too, where we're going to have Jeff and Robert signing this book, and we're going to have music from the Blues Crusaders and all things Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. So please join us, you guys, and get this book. Special thanks to my friends Jeff and Bob. Once again, you guys are great. It's always great to meet kindred spirits in music and all things Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. And it's great knowing you guys and calling you friends. So thank you so much. And thank you for being on the show today, the TV Tray Sessions. Thank you guys so much. Once again, hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner. Find me on Facebook at Todd Beebe Music. And we will see you guys again. Stay safe and love your dogs. Take care.